man. I'm overheating. I'm overheating. Let's see if we can tear something. Sorry, time out. Ah. I gotta get this tendon fixed. It's causing me problems. Oh, it's always something. I better start off lighter. Yeah. Oh, man.
Yeah, it looks like it's gonna rain soon. What time is it? 6:18. I did some stretches today. Again, it made a big difference. It's nice out here. It's nice out here. Quiet. I mean, I can hear the road, but it's peaceful. You ever just stop and think about your life, like, especially if you're older, like what you were doing in your 20s, like where you were, interesting places or interesting jobs that you might have had. I remember when I was in my 20s, I think I started when I was 19 in the shipyards. I worked in the shipyards and I became a Boilermaker, a journeyman Boilermaker. I think I became journeyman at around 22 years old. Yeah, about 22, I turned journeyman. And just in the 3 years, I think it's a 4-year apprenticeship, but it wasn't really official. It was more of a working apprenticeship. So I started pulling journeyman wages at around 23. And by 24, it was pretty. By 25 for sure, I was on top of my game, or getting there anyway. And we used to. I worked for a smaller company, a ship repair company. We did Navy contracts and stuff like that, and overhaul the whole ship. And my job, I worked in the boiler room. We'd overhaul the boilers and related equipment, mostly the boilers, and then machinists did the engines and turbines and stuff. And there, but throughout the ship, everybody was doing their specific jobs. It was all union. But in between those big Navy contracts, and even during it, sometimes a ship would come in, either be a freighter or an oil tanker, and it would dock in the middle of the bay, out in San Francisco Bay. They called it anchorage. They would anchorage out there. There were specific points where they could drop anchor. And they would come in, and they'd come in and they'd need repairs, and they would just like be running hot. So time is money with those things, because they're making millions of dollars a day, and while they're steaming or whatnot, whether it's moving oil or some other petroleum product, or whether it was moving containers, because Oakland has a big container yard. Anyway, you'd never know. You'd come into work one day, it would be 7 o'clock, 7:30 in the morning, and they say, "Oh, ship came in last night," or "Ship came in early this morning, and we have to go out on it," and it would be a water taxi. So we'd load up all the tools that we think we're going to need, because the boss had an idea what we were going to do. Well, we take all kinds of stuff and put it in these heavy canvas bags, and that you could have a strap, and you could put it on your shoulder. And of course, I had to hump all this shit. Anyway, we'd go out. We're on the shop was our shipyard was on the pier, and the piers go out in the water, and so a water taxi would come in alongside, and we just go out the shop and through the bay doors, the roll-up doors, and there'd be a water taxi there, which is just a boat. And they would taxi us out to the ship, and then they would throw a Jacob's ladder over. A Jacob's ladder is a rope ladder that's real wide and just in a bunch of squares, much like you saw it during, and if you saw any World War II footage of people climbing up the side of a ship, They're real wide. They throw it over, and more than one person could climb at a time. And so the taxi would go alongside, and if it was in the winter, usually it was really rough out there, and we'd just be bouncing up and down like this. The tanker's not, but the water taxi is. And he's got tires on the side, that they throw over the side, so you bang it up against the ship. It's not metal, steel to steel. And so we would, I'd be one of the first ones. I'd go up the Jacob's ladder, and then I'd have a rope on me, and I would throw the rope over, a lanyard over when I got, I tie it off to the railing and throw it over. And then the other guys that came out with me, they would tie off the bags, and I'd pull them all up. And everybody else was doing the same thing because there was other crafts going out there. We were just going out there to fix the boilers. And you work until you drop. I mean, you don't stop. You work. If it's 12 hours, and generally it was more, you'd work. If it was 24, you'd work. If it was 36, you worked. Anything past like a day and a half or going into that second half of a day, if you still had more work, you could crash out. The chief engineer would come down, and he'd give you a room to go crash in for like 2 or 3 hours, and then you get back up and work some more. And I remember being out there like on a Friday night, let's say, and everybody's in the city partying. It's like 11, 12, 1 o'clock in the morning, and you're out there on the ship, and you go outside, and it's cold and brisk and everything, but the Oakland's lit up, and on this side in San Francisco, on that side is lit up, and the lights reflect off the water, especially if the water was calm, and it just was majestic looking. And they had on the piers where the ships usually where they docked out there, you could hear the people at the bars and restaurants partying. It wasn't near a Fisherman's Wharf, but it was close. A lot of times it was like at the base. It was usually at the base of Mission and Market, which there were some restaurants around there at the time, where in San Francisco where there's that clock tower, and there would be some seafood restaurants, and there'd be a lot of activity, and you could hear all that going on, but we're way out in the water. And I remember just standing out there all alone, and just thinking, like, I don't know, it was this weird, strange feeling, like here you are out on the ship, and when I go back in, I'm going to go all the way down into the boiler room and work my ass off, and it's hot down there, and work with tools that most people would look at and not even know what they're for or what they're used for. I mean, just specialized tools just for boiler repair. I guarantee you, if you looked at it, you wouldn't know what it was unless you were a Boilermaker. And it was just like surreal being down there, or just being there and looking out over the water. And I got my whole life ahead of me, and I would just think to myself, what? Here I am in this little dot on this ship in the middle of the bay, and what am I going to do with my life? Where am I going to be in 20 years or 30 years? And I had all these grandiose ideas, like, I'm going to travel, I'm going to do this, I'm going to do that. Or I would think, what? Why am I here doing it? Oh, I liked my work back then, so I didn't. But I used to think to myself, there's a ton of people that would not want to be in my place right now. And yet I enjoyed it. At the same time, I felt like I was kind of missing out, because there was people, you could hear them in the distance just having a great time. And I was out there, making overtime, but still, I don't know. I often think back to those moments. And I remember at the time when I was on the ship thinking about it and looking out and, just kind of lost in my thoughts. I was thinking to myself, I'll probably never forget this moment, or these moments. I'll probably never forget this moment. Just like when I sailed on the Coral Sea in Carl Vinson. two aircraft carriers, and I watched the jets launch, especially at night, and then the afterburners would come on and just light up the ocean as they left the ship, and they got catapulted off. It's just incredible. You can't get enough of it. You can't like get used to seeing it. And I remember thinking, I'll never forget this as long as I live. And then you watch when the planes come in, and they got to catch the hook, or if they don't, boom, they got a full throttle. They got to keep that throttle on and get off, or they're going to go right in the drink. Just the way that they hit and the noise, and when they caught that cable, the catapult, spring catapults, the windings where the cables wound around a drum, these massive drums that are encased in steel on the hangar deck, and they were just like, zzz, I mean, just deafening sound. It's just, and then after the plane landed, then the cable would slowly go back and get, taut again, semi-taut again. And before the jets launched, the doors on the doors on the flight deck would come up. Hydraulic doors, big massive doors. We used to repair those. They would come up and deflect the exhaust from the jet engines. Otherwise, they'd blow everybody away. That no matter how far back you are, you get blown away. And just the deafening sound as those engines full throttle before they take off. Just sights to behold. And I knew that I was kind of privileged, not a lot of people are going to experience this. And someday I'm not going to experience it anymore. And I'm just all I have is my memory of it. It was a brutally hard job physically, and dirty and not healthy and bad for your lungs. And the bosses were hard asses. I mean, not everybody could cut it. There were guys that came and went, they just couldn't cut it. That's when I grew up and became a man. Before that, I worked in the sawmill, and I thought I was something, and that was tough too. But I remember working in the sawmill that was built in the 30s. Saws 24, 36 inch in diameter, spinning thousands of RPMs, just a couple feet away from you, with a little chicken wire guard. One came off one time and flew by me, almost cut me in half, just missed me. It went by me so fast I didn't see it, and then it just bounced off in the mill and eventually landed into a wooden wall. Yeah, it just came off. The nut was this big off the spindle, and I guess the nut backed off somehow. One of the millwrights didn't tighten it up or didn't put a cotter pin in it. That's what it probably was. That thing came flying off and almost cut me in half. I had a couple close calls like that where I almost died. It was just a matter of inches, just a matter of where I was standing, and that's it. The reason I didn't die. Not just in the sawmill, but also in the shipyards. On a windy day, something would fall off the ship, and you'd be on the pier. And I remember one time we get hit, a piece of plywood fell off the ship. The wind picked up a piece of plywood and it flew off and hit one of the laborers and just busted his shoulder right up. Or you get electrocuted. There's always something. One guy, I remember an electrician friend of mine got electrocuted. He didn't die, but he wasn't quite the same after. That's what he said anyway. In fact, I think he never went back to work. I don't think he did. Well, he might have went back for a short time, but he got fried, man. He got hit with 440. I think it was 440 or 880. But must have been 440. I think 880 would have cooked him. 440 will cook you. They had those cables just laying on the pier, supplying the ship with power when it comes in, because they'd be there for 8 months. We'd be working on them. They got to have shore power. Those cables, thick cables, just sitting on the deck. forklift or somebody screw up and go, pierce it. I mean, they were thick and protected with sheeting, but still, and you're walking on them, and shit was so dangerous. Oh, dangerous, man. I saw a lot of stuff, man. Stuff that a lot of people, never saw. I would come home from work and my friends would talk about their jobs and like they work in an office or they do this or they do that, and I just think, yeah, interesting. Their stuff was, it was nothing like what I did. I couldn't even explain what I was doing. I mean, you could, but I wonder a lot of times if people just thought I was BSing them. Yeah. Some badass dudes down there, I'll tell you what. Also in the sawmill, there were some badass dudes up there as well. Those were country hicks. They weren't loggers because we worked in a mill, but they were just tough as nails. And then in the shipyard was no joke either. Going to bars after work. Just the camaraderie, the friendships, and just because we all knew we were all in it together. We would just talk the job up after work sometimes. Sometimes we'd work 7 days a week, 12 hours a day. And they'd have a day shift and a night shift. And you just worked. They'd say, oh, we're doing 3 weeks or 6 weeks of 7/12s. Plus commuting 3 hours a day, an hour and a half back, down, hour and a half back. And then you end up having a few drinks and, oh my God. You got to be young for that stuff. Sometimes I think it was a different person, like it wasn't me. I'd be dead right now if I would have stayed in the shipyards. It was so unhealthy. I almost got killed a few times from mishaps at work, and then twice I've had 2 heart attacks. And recently I had a little spot of melanoma on my ankle. Thank God I'm getting checked up every 4 months now. Because they discovered it. It was small, but they still cut a huge chunk out. It took months to heal. I mean, they cut a giant piece. They cut a big thing like this out. It was the thing was, you could barely see it. I mean, it was just, like this big. And they cut all the skin through the skin, all the way through. And then it was on my ankle so that you couldn't pull the skin tight. So they just left it. It was like a 50-cent piece. And it had to grow over. It took forever for that to heal. And I had to keep, changing the bandage 2 times a day or minimum. I didn't want it to get infected. I had to buy so many bandages and stuff. I finally got good at it. I treated it real well, but it just took forever for the skin to grow over. To this day, sometimes it itches like crazy. Every time they cut into me, they end up cutting some nerve, and then I end up having some kind of problem afterwards. Well, not every time, but in my shoulder, back of my shoulder blade, I do. But that wasn't cancer. That was what they call a lipoma, which is like a glob of fat that it was, for some reason, formed back there. And it's not dangerous, but I didn't want it there, so they cut it out. But the guy said it was, the doctor said it was wrapped around a nerve and wrapped around some muscles. I don't know what he did, man. He was pulling on it and hacking on it. At one point he said, I don't think I can get it. I'm like, what the hell? What do you mean? Get it? And now I got all kinds of weird nerve shit going on back there. And it itches and it aches. I have to put a ball on it and rub like this against the wall. And I think it's scar tissue. Anyway, I think the guy was a hack. That's what I think. Because I had another one taken out under my... Well, that was a difficult one, too. How many did I have? I've had 2 lipomas? 2 or 3. You get older, I guess. I don't know what the hell's going on. But I think you got to keep your weight in check, and then you know these things don't come around. I mean, I'm not really fat or nothing, but I'm about 205, 206. I should be 184, 185. So what is that? That's 16. That's 20 pounds. 20 pounds is fat. If you're 20 pounds overweight, you're fat. I mean, God forbid if you're bigger than that. But the biggest I ever was it was either 235 or 237, and that was big. My waist was 38. That's a long time ago, and that's when I had my heart attacks, or one of them. Yeah, or my second one. Yeah, my second one. And after that, I said no more. I got to change some stuff. I would have been dead if I didn't change my life from health problems. Yeah, honestly, sometimes I just think that's when I come out here. And if it's quiet, I just think about my life, like in my past, my memory, and I don't know how our memories get hazy, and I can remember all that stuff back in those days, but I'm sure I have some of the details wrong. But I'll never forget what I described about being on the ships working out there. I've done that. I did that so many times. I'll never forget that experience. And when you imagine busting your balls for 36 hours at any age. I mean, when you're 20s, you can. My boss was like 39, 40. He was a working boss, a league man. He worked right alongside of me. He was a bull. He was an ex-Navy guy, 20-year. Hell of a work ethic. He paid me the greatest compliment one time. He told a mutual friend, a person that I know, years later, after I left the shipyards, they were talking about me and my name came up because the guy knew me in Sonoma. He lived in Sonoma. He said, yeah, I ran into Tom. And my old boss said, he's a great guy and this and that, but he paid me the greatest compliment. He says, if I was ever, and this guy was not known for giving compliments. He says, if I was ever stuck on a deserted island and I had to choose one person to help get me off, it would be him. I'd pick Tom. I never forget that. That was the greatest compliment anybody could give me. That if somebody was in that kind of situation, they would want me there. Because they know if there's a way to get off that island, I'm going to help figure it out. And I'm not going to give up. That's one of the greatest compliments a man could receive from another man. That's a sign of respect. You got to earn that. I mean, I know a lot of people that I'm friends with, and I know, and they're great people, but I wouldn't pick any of them to be stuck on a deserted island with. I mean, honestly, they'd fold. And if they didn't fold, they'd just be looking up to me to get them off, and they'd be probably helpless. I don't mean that in a derogatory way. There's a lot of men that just freaking can't get out of their own way. I mean, they live in our society, you can function well, but if you were in dire straits and you really had to, hump it or if you were stuck out in the wilderness or whatever, a lot of people just wouldn't be able to handle it, man. They'd crack. They'd give up. They'd freeze to death. Not me. I do best under that kind of pressure. I thrive in that environment. It just comes natural. I worked with too many men that were made of that kind of fiber when I was young. And my grandfather was that way. And, those things rubbed off on me. I mean, you go out on a ship in the middle of the bay and you got to work for 24, 30 hours, 35, 36 hours, whatever, 40. And there's no tag team. There's no, if you don't fix it, there's nobody's coming behind you. You're just a failure. It's fixable. But you just got to have the grit. You got to have the determination. You got to have what it takes to get it done. You can't just say, oh, I'm too tired. No, I mean, you just got to suck it up. You got to go. And you wouldn't know when you come in that morning to go to work. You didn't know if you got a good night's sleep or whatever plans you might have had for the weekend. You can't say, oh yeah, me and my wife or my girlfriend, we were going to go somewhere. You don't do that. You don't play that game out down there. Or you get a foot up your ass and you're done. See ya. No, you're a team player. Work comes first, and then you go play. When work is demanding your time and energy, you give it your time and energy, or you pack your bags and go back home and live with mom and dad. Or whatever, or work for the state, the nanny state, where you could be a screw up and still not get your ass canned. Not enough men in the world. Where did all the men go? Everybody's a whiner. Whining about politics. Whining about Trump. Whining about this or just what the hell? What a bunch of pussies. Just posting stupid shit. Meaningless. Thinking their lives are going to be affected. Buck up, man. Buck up. How embarrassing. You think, how does your woman even respect you? Oh, God, it's just disgusting. The whining, the complaining. Or if you have a political view that doesn't agree with somebody else or align with them, they don't want to talk to you. What the fuck is wrong with you? You need to. Sometimes I just feel like they weren't punched in the face enough. Like, wake the fuck up. Wake up. All we have in this world is each other, our friendships, and our connections. Don't align yourself with this politician like he's somebody special. They don't care about you. Your fellow man does, but they don't care about you. Their job is to pit people against people. It doesn't matter if it's a Republican or a Democrat. It doesn't matter. It does not matter. You think Trump's going to destroy America? What are you freaking smoking? Freaking idiots. Oh, so he played around with women. He raped women. Yeah, okay. And your hero, Bill Clinton, he didn't go to that island 50, 60 times. Or he did. But I guess he was just enjoying the fresh air. They're all crooked. They're all pieces of shit. Wake up. Live your life with morality and decency. And have a little respect for the people around you. Don't let politics get under your skin. Well, that was noisy. What the hell was that? What a trip. Yeah. What's the point? What will change? What will change? What will change if Trump's elected or Biden's elected? The only thing for me is entertainment value. What's going to change? What, World War III? He's going to become the dictator? Oh, are you scared? He's going to become a dictator. Give me a freaking break. Okay. It makes you sound like a pussy when you think that. If he's going to become a dictator and you're so freaking frothing at the mouth that you have to do something, then do something. Stop him. Dedicate your life to it. Be a martyr. Otherwise, quit your whining. You know? Be a man. God. This for once in your life, try to experience what it's like to be a man. That's the problem. You haven't hit nobody and you haven't been hit. You have no perspective. I bet there's a ton of men out there who've never even been in a fist fight. Imagine going your whole life and not getting in a fist fight. And not winning one. Or losing one. Or being scared. You might get in a fist fight, so you call the police. You call another man. You call a man to save you. Oh, man. What is wrong with people? What is wrong with people? You should be embarrassed. You should look in the mirror and be ashamed of yourself. If you think that somebody in the White House is going to destroy your life, you honestly need to look at yourself in the mirror and just point and laugh at that person and say, get a grip. Unbelievable. There's going to be people going to their grave that are not real men. Oh. Oh well. Different strokes for different folks, but the whining's got to stop. You should be ashamed. Again, it's nice out here. Here's the sirens. Somebody had to call the cops. You want to turn a bad situation into a worse situation? Call the police. Yeah, they're there to help. Yeah, okay. The people that run this country, it's not the president. It's not a Republican. It's not a Democrat. It's the rich elite people in this country that are pulling all the strings. They're running the country. People that you don't know about, the people in the background. And Democrat, Republican, it doesn't make any difference whatsoever. Absolutely nothing. No difference. They're not in charge. You're given the illusion that they're in charge. But they're not in charge. And the border issue, they say, oh, the border issue is going to be the big deciding factor for the election. No, it's not. The people that are going to be voting for Trump and the people that are going to be voting for Biden, that's already decided. That's decided. There's not going to be any swing. Everybody knows Biden. Everybody knows Trump. They're going to campaign and stuff, but they're not going to sway a bunch of people. That's decided already. You could have the election next week. The camps are already separated. There's not a new candidate, two new candidates that people are finding out about and making up their minds on. Everybody's made up their mind. You're not a Democratic Biden supporter is not going to vote for Trump, no matter what happens, and vice versa, no matter what happens. You're not going to get a Trump voter to say, maybe I'll give Biden a shot this year. No. And the other way around, it's not going to happen. It's already decided. All they're looking for is like dirt on each other, but if there's going to be a lot to dig up, it'd already be done. That's what they've been trying to do with Trump, with all this bull crap that's been going on. And I don't believe the rape charges. I just don't believe it. A court of law decided. Like, what? How many years ago was that? What did they find out? They went into a dressing room. What did they find out? Why didn't she come forward back then? What did they find out in court? Was there a camera? Is it raining? It's not raining. She just said years later, all these years later, I was raped. Okay. I'm not saying she was or she wasn't. But at the time, if she was raped, like really raped, wouldn't she have come out of there and been like, I just been raped? Like, hysterical? Think about it. If you rape a woman in a department store tomorrow, you think she'd be quiet for years? You think she just would come out of there and say, well, he looks like he's kind of a powerful guy. I'm gonna keep quiet. Really? And then one day he's gonna run for president, and you're gonna say, hey, he raped me when I was, a young whore. I just throw that in here, but I'm not buying it. I'm not convinced. I don't trust the courts anyway. Courts have biases. The courts have biases. I know that sounds cynical. I didn't make it that way. That's just the way it is. If you think the courts aren't biased, you've never been to court. Try going to divorce court. You'll find out about bias. If you're a man, you'll find out. Try going to court and disputing what a police officer says. He says you did this, you say you didn't. And it's just his word against yours. Go to court. See who wins. Even if you're right. Let's just say you're right. And the cop is lying. See if you win. See if you actually win. If he says this and you say that. And that's all the proof that there is. See who wins. There's bias. Go to court, and if you're a nobody, against another person who's a somebody, see who wins. Anyway, that is my ranting. And I'm always looking. I can't see the damn camera. It's right there, huh? Most people don't watch my shit anyway. All right. I'll see you later.